Hey out there Akronites, welcome once again to Around Akron with Blue Green. Now I'm down here on Mill Street in front of the Greystone building for a reason. Now in this episode we have all kinds of fun things we're going to check out. We're going to head over to the south side of Akron to Canal Place and meet up with a company called TinyCircuits, which makes tiny circuitry for DIY projects and tiny arcade games. You got to see it to believe it. We're going to go over to Kenmore and check out Chestnut Ridge, which has an amazing amphitheater in it built during the WPA program. Now to kick this show off today, we're going to head behind us here to Rubber City Comics, which is now under new management. We're going to talk all about the comic industry, the comic store, and Akron Comic Con. Let's go see what Rubber City Comics is all about.
I think comic book stores in general are a place that people can go and not be judged. You know, if you look at Big Bang Theory, you know, you have that comic book store in there. They just go and hang out. They're not judged. And they this and that. I think it's a place that if you go in all the comic book stores in the area, which there are less than there used to be, it's just due to the, you have a couple guys that made it through the whole 90s and you know, the early 2000s were really rough until the movie started kicking out. But you have a couple great stores in the area that have made it through. This one here, Rubber City Comics, next year will be its 45th year in existence. And I was actually honored to be asked to take it over, so we'll see if we can keep it going.
You have to come to a local comic shop like this. It's really the only place you can get a comic book now, which I think is part of the problem, is that, you know, a lot of people don't know these stores exist. A lot of people would never walk into a store like this because they don't think they're interested. But how do you get them interested? Well, you get them interested when they're not looking for it on the shelf somewhere else, you know. And then that's what happened to me. You know, I found the book on the spinner rack, and then I found out there were comic book stores, you know, and there was a comic book store, you know, in locally. And I looked that store up, and I went to that store, and I started going to that, and I went to that store for 15 years, you know, buying books there. So you need to find a way to get people to be interested in the comics, and I don't know that there's an answer, but I think that there are probably some things that the industry as a whole could do to help itself out.
A couple of months ago, Dan Gorman and myself formed Altered Realm Productions, which is an offshoot of our radio show. So we're Altered Realm Productions. We purchased Akron Comic Con from Mike Savine and Bob Jenkins, who ran it for 7 years. Great show, great local con, everyone loves it. Again, honored to be asked to take that over. So Dan and I, Altered Realm Productions, purchased it and going to take it to the next level. This will be its 8th year, so we're trying to grow it, expand it, make it, you know, get it back to where it was a few years ago.
Comic-Con is basically, you know, a celebration of the medium. It's a true Comic-Con is based on comics. This is kind of like what Akron Comic-Con is. It's based on, rooted in comics. We have a lot of comic book vendors. We have a lot of comic book artists. We have, you know, artists of all different types who are both published and not published who will be there. And then it's like I said, it's a celebration of the medium. There's a lot of cosplayers who dress up as the characters and show up. It's just kind of a fun time for you to go, and if you are a comic book fan, you can meet anyone from an artist to a writer who might work on the books you like, to, you know, some of the personalities that star in the movies or the television shows that you watch. So it's just a fun celebration of what we know as comic books. What we're discovering is that the movies aren't really transitioning to people coming in and buying comic books. People tend to forget that the movies came from comic books, which is, you know, mind-boggling to me, but that's kind of how, you know, that's how people perceive it. And so the trick is to get those people, you know, to leave the movie and come in and, you know, after they've seen it and they fall in love with the characters, to come in and read about, you know, the adventures that led up to the movie, you know, and are the basis for the movie, because all of those movies are based on stories that came from the pages of the comics in one form or another. And interestingly enough, there are a lot of films out there that you wouldn't know were comic books to begin with. And a lot of those are indie titles that are, are popular and actually became more popular as films. But we're kind of in an era now where the indie publisher is kind of about to, I think, really going to make a surge. More indie publishers are being accepted. More titles from those publishers are being read. And there's a lot of creativity in that area of comics that I think people would really enjoy and should give a shot to. The movies have been great for keeping the zeitgeist of the comic book character in mainstream consciousness, but as of yet hasn't really transitioned to buying comics.
I'm doing what I enjoy in life, however, it's at that cusp to where it's no longer a hobby, and it quickly became, hey, you need to get out or get in. It's a business. So that's why I convinced Dan to quit his job, and we're gonna go make a go of it. But yeah, it's no longer a hobby, and it's just like, and since we've made this jump, if you will, to Akron Comic-Con, Rubber City Comics, the doors we've made partnerships with. You're going to see a lot of stuff coming, and it's going to be awesome. So that's what I like to see. I like to see that, like we have some comics over there. A kid comes in. What gets me is the smile when I hand him a comic and say, here, go read it. That's the thing. Like, I have my collection and my stuff, around the top of Stuff Genie that's not for sale. However, if I know it's going to the right person, I'll let it go. So it's kind of like one of those things. If I have my limits, but then I'm a softie, if you will. So if I know it's going to the right place and I know it's going to have a good home and they're not just buying it to flip it, it's going to go to that home. So it's tough.
Next up, we're going to head over to Kenmore and check out Chestnut Ridge. Now, this is a gem of a park, and it's only getting better. It has an amphitheater built during a WPA program and a whole new playground there for you to check out, and much more to come. Let's go see what Chestnut Ridge is all about.
It was a Great Depression Roosevelt administration program, the Works Progress Administration, and its purpose was to provide work for people who were out of work. And they had various projects like this that would involve stonemasons. They would use carpenters. They would do all kinds of tradespeople. There were artist projects. There were projects for sewing and just writing, all variety of ways to employ people who were at that time not employed. And there was a 25% unemployment rate. It's hard to imagine, but it was true. Akron really benefited because our airport, the Rubber Bowl, the Glendale Steps, various other projects here in Akron. Good golf course was part of that. So yeah, Akron benefited a great deal from it, and the people of Akron benefited.
When I moved here in 1989, I'm a history major, so the amphitheater immediately attracted my attention. And at that time, the park was abandoned and neglected. And I would stand on the steps of the amphitheater and imagine the stonemasons laying the stones, singing, whistling, glad to have work and meaningful work through the New Deal. And I imagined them imagining what would transpire here. At that moment, I said to myself, if ever there's a chance for me to be a part of something that would bring this space back to life, I would definitely be on board with that. So when you look at the park's history, the WPA also had money that went to the arts. So even as they imagined creating this park, they also put money towards a WPA orchestra, which then performed there. And then the city of Akron followed with funding a series of the Akron Symphony here. Then there was theater here. So now on this other end, we have the city of Akron again coming together with the philanthropic organizations and the nonprofit Akron Parks Collaborative to come alongside and partner with us and reactivate this park. And in so doing, help us become one of the other rising neighborhoods of the city of Akron. Because how do you grow a city? You grow the neighborhoods. You make the neighborhoods attractive places to live and be. So you can see that it's Chestnut Ridge Park revitalization is part of what's happening on the boulevard, but the whole thing is part of what the city of Akron is doing to increase its population and the quality of life for its residents. So the park came into play after and sort of as an offshoot of the revitalization effort that started on the boulevard through Kenmore Neighborhood Alliance. Part of their mission was to revitalize the business district through the arts, and they have done so. And there's a vibrant music scene there now. The next most logical step for the performers and the theater people was to hope to perform in this amphitheater. They were already contacting me about that. And there were so many deal breakers. No bathrooms, no electricity, no trail, poor lighting, that I had absolutely no idea where to start. And just as I was trying to figure that out, the Akron Parks Challenge appeared, almost magically, and came with a $100,000 award. So we applied for that, and that was enough to activate the park that first summer of 2018.
Chestnut Ridge Park was the recipient of the Akron Parks Challenge last year. So that's $100,000 of city funds that I got to work with the community to figure out what they wanted. So they decided that they wanted to utilize the amphitheater, which meant bring electricity to it. They wanted a new playground for the kids, and they wanted a walking trail. And so we were able to, within that budget, give them all of those things. So we've got the playground already, we've got the electricity already to the amphitheater, and the trail should be going in within the next month or two. There's lots of future plans here. So there's a really active Friends of Chestnut Ridge Park group that has formed around this project, and they've got lots of ideas on what's in the future. One of the biggest things I think is programming the park, because that's what this space is. It's got an amazing amphitheater that can have all kinds of programming, from Shakespeare to school bands or what have you. So I think that's the biggest thing, is programming the park and bringing people to it.
Working with the philanthropic entities and the city of Akron has made me so grateful to be a resident here in this crazy, beautiful city that we call Akron. Most places you might get a voicemail if you're lucky, but here people respond to you. They don't respond to you, they're public service, I think, in the highest sense of the word. So Kenmore's entire revitalization has been buffeted on all sides by the Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, City of Akron, PEGS Foundation. It's like we're partners, and I think that's amazing.
Next up, we're going to head over to the south side of Akron, down to Canal Place, and meet up with TinyCircuits, a company making tiny video games and tiny circuitry for the DIY market. Let's go see what TinyCircuits is all about.
Oh God, it was very early on. So even as a little kid, 5, 6 years old, I was always taking things apart, mechanical things, electronic things. Got our first computer, I think I was about 5 or 6 years old, and in the early 80s, and just was immediately drawn to it. I remember even going before we got a computer, going to the local library in Stowe, and you could sign up for 15 minutes of computer time on an Apple II, and that was a big deal. I made my mom take me there and play with the Apple II there. And when we got a computer, yeah, my brother and I were immediately drawn to programming. And so I think maybe 7 or 8 doing my first basic programs, very simple things, display some text on the screen, but really kind of fell in love with computers at that time. So we're in kind of the heart of downtown Akron in Canal Place, which is the former B.F. Goodrich rubber factory. And in its heyday, it was 70 buildings, about 3 million square feet. There's still 1 million square feet, and we're kind of on the grungy industrial side of Canal Place. And so we're up on the 5th floor of an old rubber factory, and we're doing electronics here. So it's really kind of cool. Well, you can kind of guess it based on the name. We make tiny little circuit boards. And so we make circuit boards that allow other people to create their own projects. And so we serve what's known as the maker community. So these are people that are creating their own projects or products. And we sell into a lot of educational institutions as well. So universities, high schools, so people that are kind of taking these things that work like little electronic Legos and kind of piecing them together and creating all sorts of cool little things. We make products here. And so we design circuit boards is primarily what we do, and then we actually manufacture them here as well. And so we'll do the design of the boards, and then we have machinery that actually puts all the different components on there, so the processors, resistors, capacitors, and so we have a whole process that goes through to make the final product. And then in the case of things like the arcade, we actually make the plastic enclosure for that, which is a laser cut acrylic, and we do the final packaging, all the testing here, it ships out of here, so it's pretty much a one-stop shop. We do have some final products, but again, the bulk of what we do are kind of pieces parts. And so these are, again, like electronic building blocks that let other people kind of create their own things. But offshoots of that, we've done a few more toy type projects. And so we had a little tiny screen, we called it, and we showed some examples of a smaller arcade of something somebody could build. And we had enough interest. People said, hey, I want to buy this thing, that we decided, we're a startup, let's make that into a product, and we've sold thousands of those. It's a little arcade cabinet that you build yourself. You can create your own games for it. It's a really fun educational tool, and it's just really cool. We originally launched on Kickstarter about 7 years ago right now, actually. We've done a few of those campaigns. We have a new one that we're planning right now. We're about to launch in a few weeks of a product line called Whiskers. And these are little sensor boards that you can kind of plug in together. So you can plug them into our platform, into Raspberry Pi. So little displays, different sensors. And so we've got people creating things right now. We've got a group out of MIT creating a robotics platform. We're potentially going to send them up to the International Space Station as part of their project as well. And then all sorts of different cool things you can do with it. For the processors, typically it's on the order of kilobytes. And so like our new product line is mostly about 256K, which doesn't sound a lot if you're used to like big SD cards and whatnot. But if you keep in mind what it's trying to do, it's actually perfectly fine. In the case of the arcade, we have a little tiny TV set that we're coming out with. That uses a micro SD card to store the data. And so you can actually play movie files on a TV that's about yay big. And so again, we can just use a standard SD card, a commodity item, nothing special about it. It's a lot harder than you think. So again, we don't have any outside monies, and we're making stuff, and so it's very capital intensive. So money's always been a concern of how do you actually fund these things. And so we actually kind of lucked out with the idea of Kickstarter, where we put up an idea and we got some money up front. It really helped things out. Yeah, it's just always a challenge. Yeah, the other big thing is we do production in-house, which I'm a design engineer. And so I thought production would be much easier than it is. Producing products is very difficult. So, mad props to the people who used to make tires here. It's not an easy business, but we've kind of gotten over those hurdles now. It's been well worth it. Yes, I just say it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. We love being in Akron. I always like to hype up the fact that we're kind of this tech startup, or I guess we're a little bit past the startup phase now, but A lot of the other people we deal with are in Silicon Valley or Boston or New York, and they kind of think it's impossible to actually manufacture electronics products in the US, and so the instinct is just, I've got to go to China or Asia to manufacture this stuff. And we've kind of proven that, no, you can actually make it here. We've got a lot of space here in the heart of Akron. It's less than the cost of an apartment in San Francisco. It's like, okay, you know, the Midwest is kind of where it's at if you want to do this sort of thing. So we're able to employ a number of people. We keep our costs low, and it's just a great place for a business.
Now, to wrap up the show today, I dig back into my archives. That's right, I have hundreds of hours of footage, interviews that never made it to the show, and there's some amazing segments on there that just didn't quite fit the story. Let's go check and see what these are all about.
Working in partnership with the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior and the State Historic Preservation Offices, these organizations find it critical to revitalize the urban core with these historic buildings. And they incentivize developers to do that by taking and preserving the buildings and restoring them to a principle and a set of practices that really make the buildings going to be serving for multiple generations to come. So we look into taking these buildings and we improve them with state-of-the-art mechanicals, state-of-the-art communication systems, and making the old shells come back to life for a whole new generation. And it's very critical, the partnership, because we work in conjunction not only with the federal, state, but the local governments who often provide other incentives. One of the new ones coming out is a residential tax abatement. So that incentivizes us to create more and more places for people to live close to where they work, close to where they play. Having a concentrated core of all ages, all races, and all flavors working in close proximity to where they're educated and where they find employment really becomes part of a model of sustainability and a solution for creating a great place that's going to continue to contribute for multiple generations.
One of my favorite band-related memories, my favorite band memorabilia, is a copy of the Ann Arbor newspaper following a show I did with the Dead Boys in Ann Arbor. And the newspaper headline was, "Dead Boys and fans engage in melee at Second Chance Club." And what happened was the drummer, Johnny Blitz, in the middle of the set, stood up, grabbed a microphone, poured a pitcher of beer on his head. He was wearing an Ohio State jersey. Grabbed the microphone and said, "Your football team sucks." So bottles started flying, chairs started flying, tables started flying. And our roadies had to come pull us off the stage holding tables up as shields. But it was really scary at the time, but in retrospect, it was pretty hilarious. And for a couple of years after that, you could buy buttons in Ann Arbor that said, "I survived the Dead Boys at Second Chance."
So I was trying to tell the story of the pre-Pearl Harbor draftees because they are all supposed to serve 1 year and then go home. They were supposed to be in the reserves for 10 years, and this was all started not because of Japan, but because the Germans defeated France in the summer of 1940. So they started drafting soldiers in late 1940. My grandfather was drafted March 1st, 1941, and a year later, he's not home like he hopes to be. They're hoping to keep out of the war, even the soldiers in the Army, but he's not home. On March 1st, 1942, he's on a boat off of the Brooklyn Naval Yard, writing my grandma, "I don't know where I'm going. You probably won't hear from me for a while," which she doesn't hear from him for probably 2 months, which was crazy because they were writing daily. And he says, "Don't worry about me," which is also pretty crazy because he doesn't know where he's going, and she probably should be worried because he also doesn't know how long he's going to be gone because he was actually gone 33 straight months, and a lot of the pre-Pearl Harbor draftees were gone 30 to even 45 straight months. My other grandfather, for instance, served 36 straight months in the Pacific. So a lot of people don't know that it wasn't a year that these guys served overseas. It wasn't 2 years. A lot of times these guys were sent overseas and they were left over there for quite a while.
So I hate to admit it, but yeah, I get the the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and we've had a lot of interesting stories here over the time that I've worked here in almost 20 years. So we've had contractors who've left because they heard footsteps upstairs and there was no one else upstairs. I've had interns who could identify ladies in a different era that they saw in the house. And we also had an interesting situation in which there was a problem with a furnace in the attic, and the contractor said, well, you're really lucky the furnace was turned off or you could have had a fire. In which case, I was the only person that knew that there was a furnace in the attic and I didn't turn it off. So you decide what happened there.
Thank you once again for watching this episode of Around Akron with Blue Green. Now, if you have any questions, comments, just want to drop me an email, you can reach me at www.aroundakronwithbluegreen.com, or you can catch me on Instagram and on Facebook. Thank you so much and have an amazing day.